Well, thank you. I really appreciate that and appreciate that introduction. I did cut my teeth in Lansing during Shared Power, which was a phenomenal time to learn from co-speakers Hertel and Hilligans how government should work and how when we remember we're Michiganders first, there's a lot of common ground to be found. And that's exactly the kind of leadership that I'm trying to make sure we continue on in the state and renew in government. So as I listened to my good friend Stacey Abrams speak yesterday, and she was talking about seeing the humanity in one another, it really, I think, solidified for me one of the lessons that I've learned in just the last few months. I spoke during the State of the State, and the part of that whole hour-long speech that I got the most positive feedback on was when I said we need to get back to seeing the humanity in one another. And I identified each of the four leaders and told something personal about each of them. Mike Shirkey, the leader in the Senate, who's married to Sue and lives on a beautiful lake in Jackson and has 12 grandkids and loves Cheese Whiz. Seriously. Lee Chatfield, the Speaker of the House, who has 5 children, lives here in the northern part of the Lower Peninsula, and just celebrated a birthday this last weekend. Chris Gregg, who is the Democratic leader in the House. She and her husband, Bob, he is a chef. She played tennis this weekend for the first time in a while, enjoying her Memorial Day weekend. And my dear friend Jim Ananick, who has a young son named Jake, who he adopted when we served together in the Senate. He and his wife Andrea live in Flint. Like a lot of Flint families, they've been worried about their young child with regard to the water, of course. And then there's, people who don't know me very well might not know that I am in a New Age Brady Bunch family where I married a man with 3 sons and I brought 2 daughters into this marriage. We got this New Age Brady Bunch thing going on. But I learned about Patty Poppy last night, that she's got twins, and she and Eric had some lean times at the beginning and bought a lawnmower at a garage sale in hopes that they would take landscaping off their expense list. It didn't last very long. And Sandy Barua, he and his wife Lisa have an adult son named Isaac, and Sandy Barua loves tater tots. I mean, he really loves tater tots, right, Sandy? But if we take a minute to get to know something about one another, we can start a conversation and build a relationship and find some common ground. And that's, I think, something that's really important, whether it's in business or in politics, no matter what you are doing. If you're trying to take on tough issues, it starts with finding common ground. Our common ground is the state of Michigan, the great legacy that is the state of Michigan. I was stunned, Patty, when you used this in your PowerPoint, because it's been in mine for a while. But I think that we are so fortunate to come from a state that people used to move to for opportunity. People came to our state from around the world for a good paying job. And once you got here, it didn't matter where you moved. You knew your children were going to have a phenomenal first-class public education. You could turn on the tap with confidence because we had clean water, an abundance of it, and we had great infrastructure because we put the world on wheels in those middle-class jobs. And so that is our great legacy. We were the home of innovation and opportunity. Anyone who's heard me speak in the course of the last 2.5 years knows I love the bridge, the Mighty Mac. This is an example of our collaboration and our ingenuity. In 1957, this bridge opened up to traffic, and it is a 5-mile-long suspension bridge that most people didn't think was even engineeringly possible, much less on top of the Straits of Mackinac, where 2 Great Lakes meet. But we built it. We built this bridge even in a time of divided government, when we had a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature. We built this bridge, and it connected our people, and it strengthened our economy. And now, over 60 years later, we're still coming together to build bridges, figuratively, politically, and I hope literally as well. We have the opportunity to do great things in this state, and we are capable of it. On April 17th, we joined forces to address the injustices inherent in our criminal justice system. You can see the Lieutenant Governor there, the Chief Justice, our Attorney General, House Republican leadership, and people from law enforcement. This is the 3 branches of government, both sides of the aisle, coming together to address a problem that's been vexing us as a state. We did it again today. Yay! I'm sorry to say Jim Ananick is not in this photo, but he was there, and this is a picture, of course, of the leaders and me and the Lieutenant Governor signing the bill today. You know, we worked together to rewrite a 40-year-old law to give Michigan drivers a break, to protect our safety net, and to make sure that our state is competitive. And it wasn't easy. It was dicey. Trust me, there were moments where we thought it was all going to fall apart. But we got to the table and negotiated, and we found a solution that will help people from across our state. This is an issue that we've spent a lot of time and energy on in the state, and in the first 5 months of this year, we were able to get it done. And I think that this shows that when we stay focused on the things that unite us, when we avoid the highly partisan things we know we'll never find common ground on, we actually can solve problems in this state. It was hard, but we built relationships and some goodwill, and now it is time for us to translate that into action on a lot of other items that we've got to confront as a state, because we've got work to do. Now, I want to talk to you about the state budget, because that is what we are in the midst of addressing right now in Lansing. We've got to get our state budget in order. For the last 4 decades, we've seen leaders stop investing in the things that really grow a foundation and strengthen a foundation of our state. They've been playing shell games because our ability to pay for things has not kept up with our need. And so when it comes to the road crisis that we have, instead of raising the revenue to fix the roads and to rebuild our infrastructure, they started taking money out of the general fund to fill potholes. So just triaging a system across the state that's been falling apart. To shore up the general fund that hasn't grown in 20 years, they started taking money out of the school aid fund. And I want to tell you, this has been going on for 40 years. I'm not blaming a person. I'm not blaming a party. This is on the watch of a lot of different leaders in our state. For a lot of different reasons, they've resorted to doing this. And because of this, we're now not doing any of these things particularly well. We're certainly not rebuilding roads. We're filling potholes. And that is a very expensive way to run an infrastructure system. And it's never going to last when we do it that way. We've compromised our ability to fund the things that used to come out of the general fund, like keeping down the cost of a 4-year degree or cleaning up drinking water. And to shore that up, our kids have paid the worst price in divestments from the school aid fund. Another consequence of this is that the public's lost confidence in government because a shell game is being played. And when people don't feel there's truth in taxation, they don't accept proposals like the one that the previous administration tried to push in order to fund our infrastructure. And so all 3 of these things have been compromised because of the shell game that's been played. So, as a result, we've got outcomes that are lagging the rest of the country. This is not a graph that I like showing, but we have to have a very honest conversation about outcomes for kids in Michigan. Right now, we are last when it comes to leading proficiency in our country. Until we fix this, nothing else matters. Michigan is 50th because we have been failing to invest in our children's education. Yes, money is in education, but it's not getting into the classroom. And that's why it's so important that those school aid dollars get back into our K-12 system. We also have a growing skills gap in Michigan. I know that there are a lot of employers in here with whom I've spoken, and I know that the ability to find great qualified candidates is something that we're struggling with. And this is why. Only 45% of our adults have the post-secondary skills or certificate that they need in order to get into a high-paying job. We all know that this was one of the things that Amazon listed when they didn't keep us in the top 20 in terms of their places where they were looking for their HQ2. And it compromises not just business bottom lines, but salaries and household incomes. I'm just curious if you want to show me how many of you are having a hard time finding talent in the state of Michigan. Yeah, a lot of hands going up. And this is a big problem for us as we continue to grow our economy and draw investment into Michigan. We've got to have the skills to do the jobs. So closing this skills gap is something that is absolutely essential and an important part of the budget that I've introduced. So we're going to talk about something that's really shocking. You know, we're going to talk about Michigan's crumbling infrastructure, right? I want you to see a video that I took coming from Traverse City to Mackinac City on Saturday. I did the Bayshore 10K. I walked it with some of my girlfriends for the Memorial Day weekend, and then I came right over here. So one of our pure Michigan destinations to another one of our pure Michigan destinations, and this is the road. As you can see, it is riddled with potholes, years of patching, and it looks like a third world country going from Traverse City, Michigan to Mackinac City. Our roads are terrible and they're downright dangerous, and this is the problem that we've got to fix. And when we fix it right, we can address all the other pieces of the budget that I highlighted. It goes on and on. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So instead of building roads, we've been making signs, like this one. This photo was taken on US 31 in Emmett County last February. This is what 4 decades of disinvestment has done. The road that you just saw, which is one of roads all across the state, and signs like this that we have to put up for people to be warned about what they're about to confront. We've been cutting corners for 40 years, and now we have the worst roads in the country, the state that put the whole world on wheels. And we've got serious challenges around education and skills and water quality in Michigan. And I want you to see this young man. His name is Monty Scott. He's from Muskegon. He's 12 years old, and his mom had a huge car repair bill, and so he went out and started filling potholes on his street. I want you to see this cartoon because I think it's important for you to have a good laugh before you see some of the reality of what we need to fix. The director of transportation in Michigan, Paul Ajaba, uses this sometimes in his presentation. He's putting his head down. I can see him. He's gone from being known as a world-class engineer to being the fix the damn roads guy. So let's talk about what the standards should be and where we are and how we rate and what we're going to do about it. The national standard is 90%. At any given time, a state's roads, 90% of them should be in good or fair condition at any given time. You should be only working on about 10% of your infrastructure. Unfortunately, before the 2015 gas tax, this was the trajectory that we were headed on. And as you can see, we were falling fast. Then came along the 2015 gas tax, and people were told that the problem was fixed. But in reality, here's how it changed that trajectory. It just slowed our decline. And that's what we are confronting right now. So while the standard is 90%, currently we are at 78% of our roads in good to fair condition. Clearly, some of you who live in metropolitan Detroit are thinking, how are we even that high, right? But that's where we are. The thing about roads is that there's no such thing as the status quo. You can't do what you're doing today and expect it will stay the same. You're either declining or you're rebuilding, and that's the problem, and that's where we're headed and why we need a bold solution to change this trajectory. We will drop from 78% down to 65% in just 2 years. It's a 13 percentage point drop. It'll be about 50-50 by 2026, and that is truly where we get to a point of no return. And that's why it's so important that we change this trajectory now. In order to take us to 90%, and it's still going to take us 10 years to do it, by the way, we have to start spending $2.5 billion a year on our infrastructure. If we wait just a couple years, it will be $3.5 billion. And with the cost of construction going up, it could be even more than that. But that is the challenge that we have. Now, our roads are bad, and potholes can damage cars and be downright dangerous. But I'll tell you what keeps me up at night: the state of our bridges. I ran about bridges, but I want you to know about some of our Michigan bridges. This is a picture from the Detroit Free Press that ran a couple weeks ago. This is the Miller Road Bridge in Dearborn. This bridge was built in 1931. It's 89 years old, and it is the bridge right outside the Ford Rouge factory. Across this bridge, trucks full of brand new cars that we're making right here in Michigan travel every day. Clearly, buses full of school children travel over it as well. And thousands of Michiganders cross that bridge. Right now, it is being held up with a patchwork of 524 temporary supports. Michigan has over 11,000 bridges in this state, and of those, 1,000 of them have weight restrictions right now because they cannot handle the weight for which they were originally designed. 800 of them are in poor condition. More than 400 of them are in serious to critical condition, and 49 are completely closed because they pose an imminent threat to our safety. This isn't just Dearborn or Southeast Michigan. This is across our state. In Charlevoix, there's a drawbridge. Anyone who's been across it knows it is beautiful, and sometimes it holds you up because there's maritime traffic, but the drawbridge keeps getting stuck. And so it not only impedes road traffic, it impedes maritime traffic too right now. That bridge needs to be rebuilt. I want to give you just a little bit of perspective. One school district in our state, the Livonia Public Schools, on an average day, their school buses go over bridges over I-96 600 times in just one school day. This is the real threat to our safety, and it's a threat to our economy. If that bridge outside of the Ford Rouge factory goes down, think about what it means for our economy. But the most important thing is think about what it means to our safety. I want to show you this bridge collapse, and this is what I talk about when I say this is what keeps me up at night. This was in Minnesota. 140,000 people used to travel this bridge every single day. This collapse killed 13 people. It injured 145. After the collapse, the Minnesota State Legislature raised the gas tax and raised $2.5 billion for a bridge improvement program. We can't wait until after a tragedy for us to solve this problem. We know this exists. We know it's real. We know the consequences, the human consequences. We know the economic consequences as well. If we're going to make Michigan a safer, more successful state for future generations, we've got to start now. We have to think about kids that are growing up in Michigan, those second graders whose cards I read to you during the welcome remarks yesterday. Kids who are attending our public schools and are falling behind, or communities that are worried about their drinking water. School buses that are going over bridges. So, what's it going to take? Well, I think that there have been study after study drafted and written and done by various groups, and the figure truly is at about $2.5 billion. I listened to a radio interview the other day, and they said, oh, the number keeps changing. Well, the number keeps growing because we haven't actually fixed the problem, and that's why the numbers changed. But it is at about $2.5 billion. And the Snyder administration did a report as well, and just so that we have an honest conversation, wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that's what it's going to cost. So I put a plan on the table, and it wasn't an easy plan to lead with. But I ran on fixing the roads, and when I sat down with Director Rajab, I said, what is it truly going to take? To get to a $2.5 billion investment, a gas tax from all of our studies appeared to be the best way to go about doing it. So the gas tax has to be about 45 cents to raise $2.5 billion. And I know that's going to be hard for a lot of people in our state. So we phased it in over the course of a year, about a year, 15 cents. Now, I did an interview the other day, and they said, oh, I know you want to raise the gas tax. I said, I don't want to raise the gas tax. But this is the problem that we're confronting as a state. And no more phony solutions. Every time we don't tackle this, it gets more expensive and more dangerous. And so this is a real solution to get this done. It raises the $2.5 billion in the form of a user fee. And the thing that I think makes the most sense about a gas tax is that it is constitutionally protected from that shell game that I told you about a little while ago. Because under Article 9, Section 9 of our state constitution, every penny will actually go into our roads and bridges. Like roads in metropolitan Detroit, which because we have an old system of prioritizing dollars, this new way of doing it with this gas tax means we can prioritize the most distressed roads in the most economically important parts of our state and not continue to go through Public Act 51, which is a 68-year-old law that doesn't address the problems that we're really confronting as a state. This is a real long-term fix for our infrastructure problem that I put on the table. This gets us to 90% by 2029. And when you rebuild roads the right way, you won't see orange barrels every other year like I know you feel like you see them now, because they'll actually be rebuilt and last for decades. When we can maintain them properly, we can get decades more out of them. Now, the cost of inaction is something that I wanted to make sure that we had a minute to look at. Every year that we don't take this on, you see the costs continue to rise. So as hard as it might be to embrace this gas tax that I've proposed, you can see it goes dramatically up, and our ability to actually address the road situation gets much more difficult as well as dangerous. Now, the last thing I wanted, not the last thing, sorry, didn't mean to tease you there. I did want to make sure to acknowledge this. So I've gotten questions, is there any other way to do this? Is there something that's going to be easier? Well, first, the hard truth is there's no easy solution. If there was, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. If we are to raise $2.5 billion, there are only a handful of taxes in our state that could possibly do that. Some have suggested a corporate income tax, which I'm sure is really popular in this room, right? We'd have to triple it in order to raise enough revenue to fix the roads. Go from 6% to 19.5%. And the problem with it still is that we'd have to hope that future governors and legislators actually put the money into the roads, because it's not a gas tax, and so it's not constitutionally protected. Same goes for the individual income tax. And for the sales tax is even harder, because we'd have to go to a vote of the people before we could get it passed, and still hope that future legislatures appropriate the money into the roads. And that's precisely why we ended up with the gas tax. Now, in case there's anyone in this room who's thinking, what about marijuana? You were all thinking that, weren't you? It comes up in every talk I give, so I'm just going to address it just in case there was one person here. People always say, well, we legalized marijuana. Can't we just take those taxes and fix the roads? Maybe it's a pot for potholes thing that people think about. But even at its height, the taxes from marijuana will raise about $42 million a year for infrastructure. We have a $2.5 billion problem. I got this question so much, I asked my team, what would it take? How much marijuana would we have to sell? Wait till you hear the answer. Every man, woman, and child would have to smoke about $2,500 of marijuana a year to fix our roads. And let's be honest, at that level, no one's going to care about the damn road. So, to get back to the serious stuff, the solution I put on the table truly is, I think, the best solution to actually fix the problem. When we do it, we improve the quality of life. We make Michigan a more competitive state, and we ensure that for years to come, we're going to be a state that people come to for opportunity. One of the things that I like about this way of doing it as well is it fixes the shell game and gives truth in taxation and accountability back into our budget, so the public knows that the money that they are spending is going where it's supposed to. When you raise it at the gas pump, it goes into the roads. The general fund dollars get back into general fund expenses, and the school aid dollars can get back into educating our kids. That's how we take Michigan from 50th to becoming a top 10 state in outcomes for our kids. When we get this budget passed, this one lever fixes all of these problems. And that's why when we actually raise the money the right way, we get into a position where we can close the skills gap, clean up our drinking water, and educate our children. Prioritizing our kids' education. When we stop robbing the school aid fund to backfill the general fund, which is going into potholes, we can put $507 million into our education system right away, which will help us reduce class size, increase technology. We can triple the number of literacy coaches, increase career tech education, which is certificates for high schoolers so they're on a path to a high-wage skill. Increase funding for at-risk students so the kids in DPS have real equity that is built into this budget, informed by the school research collaborative. So science informs the decisions we're making so we can better educate all the kids in Michigan. And increased dollars for special education students. When the general fund money comes out of potholes and goes back into the general fund, we can do things like the Michigan Reconnect, which is a skills-based program for adults who are 25 and older who want to upskill. Maybe they've been displaced, or they're in a job that's changing and their skills need to improve, or they want to get into a higher wage job. And we can fund the Michigan Opportunity Initiative, which is for graduating high schoolers to go on to a debt-free community college degree or bringing down the cost of a four-year degree. This is opening up paths to close the skills gap in Michigan and get to our 60% goal, which is where we need to be headed and the goal that we set in the State of the State. The greatest investment in Michigan kids in a generation is what this budget is all about. But you don't have to take my word for it. Education leaders across the state have come out in support of this budget because of what it means for our kids. Business leaders, education experts, and labor leaders. When we fund infrastructure right, it gives us the ability to close the skills gap. I want to take a minute and take in this picture. You don't see all these people together very often. My goal is to make sure we spend more time together, but this is, leaders in business, in labor, Democrats and Republicans. This is a group that has come together to say closing the skills gap is our top priority. And that's what this budget does, because this is not a partisan issue. So our goals that we should all be able to agree on is 1, fixing the damn roads, closing the skills gap, and prioritizing our kids' education. Now, Dan told you in the introduction that I came into the experience of the legislature as an intern and then as a staff person in divided government, shared power, actually. We have divided government in Michigan, and I know you've heard me say we're going to build bridges and we're going to remember we're Michiganders first. But when we focus on the fundamentals, these are the not inherently partisan issues that we can find common ground on. But every one of us has to be a part of this. Your support for this plan has been really important. But I need everyone in this room to step up and to make sure that you become an active part in getting this done. We got to come together and keep building bridges. And that's how we're going to solve our most pressing problems. You're going to have a lot of conversations on the porch or at receptions. You're going to have chances to talk with legislators. And I'm asking that when you do that, you have the conversation about where we are headed. I showed you these cards yesterday, and this one was from a young man named Aaron. He wants us to act like a big family. I believe that when people of goodwill step up and are bold, that we are going to truly be a successful state, because we'll be a state of successful people. Because let's be honest, if we have to choose whether or not to engage and see the trajectory that we're on, or to all be a part of solving it, I hope there's only one choice, and it's the latter for everyone in here. I know that no matter what happens with this budget, everyone in this room is going to be fine. If you can't drink the water coming out of your tap, you'll buy bottled water. If you get sidelined by a pothole, maybe you'll drive your other car. I know that your child is in a crowded classroom, maybe you'll send your child to a private school or hire a tutor. But what about our kids and your clients and your customers? That's who I'm thinking about. We can ensure that Michigan is a state where those second graders who sent me all those notes want and will stay and make their lives. But we have to be bold right now, and we have to do it together. We have momentum. It is time for us to continue and to everyone be a part of it. And so that's why I'm asking that you, this is you, jump in and help me get this done. You know, after this event, when you go to the porch, seek out a legislator, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, and have the conversation. Tell them what a failing infrastructure means to you and to your business. Tell them what you think about our K-12 system that desperately needs to improve. Tell them what the skills gap means to your business. And that's my challenge to you today, to be a part of getting this done. Act like your future depends on it, because it does. Thank you.